Thank you so much, Elena, and thank you to the Edmonton Region Immigrant Employment Council and for the Calgary region as well. I know this is a combined initiative. We're so really delighted to be part of this. My name is Quinta. I am part of the employer relations team at CPA Alberta. I'm going to dive right into this presentation because we don't have too much time. So let's just see if my slides are working here. Okay, yeah. So there are some slides where I'm going to go really quick, just to kind of provide you an overview. And in some, I'm going to slow down and take my time to really explain. But this here is just to provide an overview of the fact that CPA Alberta actually represents over 30,000 chartered professional accountants who work across the province. And we are part of CPA Canada. And CPA Canada has over 217,000 CPAs. So they do work nationally, and a lot of them do work internationally as well. And just to let you know, if there's anything that you take away from this presentation today, it should be the fact that yes, you can become a CPA in Canada if you put your heart to it. If it's obviously if you think that can help you to further your career, but it is it is possible. And why do I say that? I say that because there's a great diversity that exists within this profession. You know, we've had people come from every background, every culture, to work their way to becoming CPAs, and a lot of them are really thriving in their careers right now. You know, and I'm going to run through these first slides. But again, the idea is to really highlight that diversity for you guys. Here, for example, we have Chichen, who moved here from China. We have Ayo Abu, who moved here from Nigeria. We have Viviana, who moved from Colombia. Carlos is from Mexico. We have Marina, who moved here from Ukraine many years ago. All these people are now working. You know, they came here, they had different challenges. Some of them, you know, I mean, from one immigrant to another, we all understand that it's not easy moving to a new country. There are obstacles. Language is sometimes one of those bigger obstacles. A lot of these people overcame those obstacles, went on to get their designations. And again, like I said, they're really doing well in their careers right now. So bottom line is that you can do it, okay? So I'm going to speak a little bit differently. Here, I wanted to sort of show the difference between a CPA and accountant, but I think what I'm going to do is really just talk about some of the advantages of becoming a CPA. So one of them is the fact that this designation is really recognized and respected by employers. And what does that mean to you? It means if you have those letters on your resume, it sets you apart. So when an employer looks at your resume, they know that this person has the training, they have that educational backbone, and that they have the skills to be able to bring and add value to my organization. So employers do know and respect this designation. And also having the CPA designation also helps you to progress faster in your career compared to somebody else who may not have the designation. And then the other advantage too is that it really offers you flexibility. So for example, sometimes people think CPAs only work in accounting departments or they only work for accounting firms. And yeah, to an extent that is true. But there's also a big number of CPAs that work in different sectors of the economy. They work in oil and gas, they work in industry, in education, they work in you know, not-for-profit organizations. They run their own businesses, for example. So that's just something to keep in mind, that it gives you the choice to be able to work in any sector and in any role that you want to work in. Of course, if accounting is your thing, that's fine too, but at least you have that flexibility. The other advantage is that CPAs do make good money, again, because they have that skill, they have the knowledge, they're bringing that value to organizations. And so Yeah, so employers recognize that and they do compensate them for that. Now, this is why I'm going to slow down a little bit. So how do you become a CPA? So I'm going to show the path to becoming a CPA, and then hopefully I can answer your questions after that, if you have any questions. But there are two components to it, two things to keep in mind. The first thing is that there's the education part of it. Okay, so the CPA professional education program is a part-time, mostly self-study program. So there's the education component, and then there's also the practical experience component of it. To become a CPA, you need to complete both of them to get your CPA designation. So this is really high level. I'm gonna quickly run through this steps, and then I'm gonna go into detail in subsequent slides. First thing, when you decide that you want to become a CPA, what is the first thing that you need to do? Make sure you fulfill the entrance requirements to get into the profession. And I'm going to show those entrance requirements again in subsequent slides. Once you complete your requirements, then you gain admission into the CPA professional education program, which we call CPA PEP. At the end of the CPA professional education program, you write the common final exam, which we call the CFE. Again, remember, this is the education part. I mentioned the fact that there's also the practical experience part of it. So once you successfully complete your education and you successfully complete your 30 months of practical experience, that's when you become a CPA. That's when you get your designation. So what do those entrance requirements look like? At the very minimum, usually the profession is looking for an undergrad degree, and it could be in any discipline. Of course, it could be in accounting, finance, but it could also be in a completely different area. Typically, people coming in usually have to complete some prerequisites. There are 14 of them in total, I believe. But of course, if you do have a degree in accounting or commerce, or related to those areas, then typically you may not have to complete all these prerequisites because you might have already covered some of them as part of your degree. And then the other requirement is that typically you need to complete a transcript assessment. And so what do those prerequisites look like? So we have the core and the non-core courses here. I'm just gonna give you a few seconds to take a look at them. But the thing to note is that the core courses have an expiry date on them. So the reason for that is because these courses are the foundation, like they're the foundational courses for the competencies that you will be developing in the program. So they need to have been taken within the last 10 years. So if you took them over 10 years ago, then typically if you're applying to get into the program, you would have to take the courses again. And then there's the non-core courses where there's absolutely no, you could have taken them 20 years ago, as long as you passed, that's fine. And there's also a minimum grade requirement for the non-core courses, it's 50%, and for the core courses, it's 60%. Again, like I said, if you have a background in accounting, commerce, then typically you most likely have already covered some of these courses. Thing to note though is that for internationally trained professionals, even if you have all these courses already as part of your post-secondary education, typically you still have to do business law and taxation just because the context in Canada is different. Okay, so you've listened to my presentation and you're like, I think I'm gonna, and then you've obviously done your research, asked a lot of questions, and then you've decided that I want to pursue this designation. What is the very first thing you do after that? I guess to start the process is what I'm trying to say. First thing is that you need to create a profile, and you do that by going exactly to this website, mycpawsb.ca. you create your profile. Creating your profile with the CPA Western School of Business is pretty much like creating an account. I think that's like everyday language, if we want to put it that way. So you create a profile, and that just signals the school that this person is interested in either getting more information or pursuing this designation. And then you after creating your profile, you request a transcript assessment and you pay $100 fee. You need to make arrangements for your transcripts to be submitted. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail there. And after the school receives your documents, it typically takes them 10 business days to complete your assessment, and then they get back to you with what you need to do next. The thing to note here is that a transcript assessment is only valid for 1 year. So for example, if somebody created a profile and requested, submitted all their documents and then received feedback from the CPA Western School of Business, but did not take action, so you didn't take any of your prerequisites or you just didn't do anything, then your file is considered inactive after a year. And your file is considered after a year. Sorry, I'm just a little bit distracted here. And then you have to request another transcript assessment and pay another $100 fee. Sorry, why am I freezing a little bit? Okay, so speaking about transcript assessments, it's a two-step process for anybody who's interested in pursuing the CPA education program. The first step is doing a general transcript assessment, which I believe a lot of internationally trained professionals are familiar with. That is usually done through one of these organizations. There are more, but the ones that we hear about, the most popular ones are WES and I believe IQAS. So they do a transcript assessment to confirm your general level of education. In Canada, for example, if you have a bachelor's degree, say in accounting, they will assess to confirm that if that degree actually translates to the same level of education here in Canada. So that's a little bit more general. But for those who are interested in becoming CPAs, there's a second transcript assessment that is usually done by the CPA Western School of Business. So the CPA Western School of Business would then look at the report from WES or IQAS or any other third party, and then they would assess your transcripts specifically to confirm that you qualify to enter the CPA professional education program. Okay, and then so really quickly here, so the CPA Western School of Business actually recommends the WES ICAP. So it's called the WES International Credential Advantage Package. Just because this is a little bit more streamlined. So basically, you would ask your school to send your documents, your official documents to WES. You would inform WES that the assessment is for you to enter the CPA professional education program. So you want them to do the WES ICAP. They would do that assessment, and then they would send your report directly to the CPA Western School of Business. Now, in this case, when the CPA Western School of Business receives your assessment from WES, it's enough. They don't need to receive any additional information from your post-secondary institution. Now, if it's a different type of assessment, so that third party, whether it's WES or IQAS or another organization, would send that document to the CPA Western School of Business, but the school also requires your post-secondary institution to send them your documents, your official documents. So you can see that this is more streamlined than that. So for people who are interested in becoming CPAs, we typically say, if you can request the WES ICAP, the course by course International Credential Advantage assessment, then that would make things a little bit easier for you. So that basically, if you remember correctly, if I go back to these slides here, if you remember, we sort of did this high level overview where we talked about the first step towards becoming a CPA to fulfill those entrance requirements. So we've just covered that, okay? So those are the entrance requirements here. Now let's really just quickly look at what the CPA Professional Education Program, or CPA PEP, looks like. So this would be this part here. So I'm just gonna fast forward a little bit. And so this is, yes, so this is sort of a visual representation of what that program looks like. So once you complete your entrance requirements, you gain admission into the CPA Professional Education Program, which is a 2 to 3 year program, depending on, you know, some people take they kind of take a module and then they kind of maybe take a break in between. But if you're going steady, consistently, then it's possible to complete this program in 2 years. It's made up of what we call modules. So there are 6 modules in total. We have the core modules, we have the elective modules, and then we have the capstone modules as well. Each of these modules takes 8 weeks to complete. And at the end of each module, you need to write and pass an exam to move on to the next module. And like I said before, it's mostly a self-study program, part-time, but midway through each of the modules, there are in-person workshops. And even though it's a self-study program, you do have access to all the tools. So once you are in this program, you have resources that are available at your disposal to help you to be successful in the program. You also have, you know, facilitators, and you have mentors, and you have people that can help you to be successful. And you can also reach out to other candidates as well. So core 1 is really where you cover, it's more, you know, you touch on the different competencies. So you're covering breadth. You're not going very deep in any one of them, but at least you're having an idea of what financial reporting, strategy and governance, management accounting, audit and assurance, finance, and taxation are. So those are the 6 core competency areas of the program. Now, the advantage here also of sort of touching on each of these areas is that it gives you a good idea of where you want to specialize, depending on what your career goals is. Because when you go into the elective modules, you then have an opportunity to choose 2 of these 4 electives. So for example, if you want to become a specialist, an expert in tax, then that would become one of your electives. And then that's when you go really deeper. So you're gaining depth in these areas because you're studying a little bit more deeper in those 2 electives that you've chosen. And then the capstone modules is, at this point, you're pretty much getting to the end of the program. Capstone 1 is where the profession, or the CPA Western School of Business, really helps candidates to develop or to polish their teamwork and their collaboration skills, and also their public speaking and their presentation skills as well. Because after all, you know, when you go into a corporate environment or any work environment, it's very rare to see somebody that is just working in isolation. Usually you're working with a team of people who have different, you know, they're coming from different backgrounds, they have different personalities, they have different, you know, different ways of doing things. So the key is to be able to work in that collaborative environment. And so the CPA program helps with that as well. And then in the very last module, which is Capstone 2, candidates really are spending most of their time preparing to write the final exam. So I mentioned the fact that at the end of the program, there's something called the CP. It's a 3-day exam. It's all case-based. And what do I mean by that? Basically, there are no multiple choice questions. It's a lot of analyzing different business scenarios. So there's a lot of writing involved. So that's why usually what we recommend is that before somebody enters the program, make sure that your English proficiency is at least at a level 8. And I believe that is considered like grade 12 English because the CPA professional education program it's a postgraduate. So it's equivalent to a master's degree, basically. And there's a lot of, writing that is involved. There's a lot of communication that is involved in the program. So it's really good to make sure that you bring your level of English to a good level so that you don't fall behind because of language, because of a language barrier when you are in the program. Practical experience, like I mentioned, it's 30 months. It needs to be progressive. And that basically just means that maybe you start off by doing administrative work, but as you progress in your program, you also want to progress and take on some more challenging work. Maybe you do more analysis in your program, in your job. And maybe you get to a point where you even have somebody reporting to you. Obviously, every company, has different projects that they can provide to candidates to help them to progress in their practical experience. And then basically there's reporting that happens. So because you're probably wondering, how does CPA Alberta know that I've successfully completed my 30 months? So candidates are required to submit reports that just describe the projects that they're working on, the tasks that they're working on, so that there's a team at CPA Alberta that is basically looking at that experience and, providing you feedback to let you know if that work that you're doing is actually helping you to progress in your practical experience. And so there are two or three ways of gaining your practical experience. There's something called the pre-approved route, and there's something called the experience verification route. There's also a combination path. So, the PPR is when CPA Alberta works with an organization to sort of create different job roles so that somebody going through the program, so if you are pursuing your CPA designation and you are going through the PPR route, you're essentially already gaining your designation, your practical experience, because CPA Alberta has already worked with a company to make sure that those roles meet the requirements. And so in this case, the reporting is very streamlined. There's not a lot of reporting, again, because we know the organization knows what you're working on, the roles that you're going through. Experience verification is when the candidate, the person that is going through the CPA professional education program, is responsible for making sure that the employer is giving them work that is going to help them to progress in getting their 30 months of practical experience. Now, in this case, the reporting is very detailed because CPA Alberta has no clue what you're working on. So it's up to you to tell the profession in detail the projects that you're working on so that they can help to determine if you're meeting your practical experience requirements. Now, the third part that I mentioned, or the third way, is basically just the fact that sometimes we see that people start in EVR, so they start on an experience verification route, but then they're able to find an opportunity or find a company that will help them to go through the PPR to complete their designation. So you don't have, it's not one or the other. You could do a combination of both. So that, I know this kind of flew by because I knew I didn't have too much time. This essentially is, it's the end of our presentation, but I just wanted to ask if anybody in the audience has a designation from abroad, an accounting designation. Do we have any? Anybody with a designation?
I believe we had some, but why don't you finish the presentation so that I can stop the recording and so that we can feel free to ask questions, Quinta?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I want to send this recording to our other clients, and then those ones who stayed, they will be able to ask you personal, like individual questions.
Okay, absolutely. I wanted to see if I should continue, if there's anybody who is where this would be applicable, but yeah, absolutely, I'll continue.
Yeah.
So I just showed you the path to becoming a CPA, and that is the path that most people follow. So that's the path where, if you have a degree but you don't have an accounting designation, then that's the path for the majority of the people that come into the designation. But I also wanted to mention that some people who already have an accounting designation from abroad don't necessarily have to go through that path that I just described. You don't have to go through years of education again. You can actually, we do have some agreements in place that can help you basically to do a swap, so to speak. So we have something called the Mutual Recognition Agreement, so that people who have this designation called the IMCP, or if you have a CPA, if you are a CPA from the US, then through a mutual recognition agreement, you could essentially just become a CPA without having to go through the CPA education program. The reason why I put the expired ones is because we get a lot of questions from people with either the ACCA designation, CIMA, or any of these four, asking us, if they can receive any credit. And so we used to have like a mutual recognition agreement with these organizations, but that has expired. Typically, what we tell these people is submit your application, and then the CPA Western School of Business will consider you, will look at your credentials and see where they can place you in the program. But we also have something called IFAC, the International Federation of Accounting, which I'm gonna touch on in the next two slides. Anyway, so we have the mutual recognition agreement. So and then there's also the reciprocal membership agreements, which we have with some of these organizations. Okay, so if you are a member of any of these, then again, it's possible that you can get your designation, your CPA designation, without having to go through the program, like those modules that I talked about in previous slides. There's also something called the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU. And so if you have a designation with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India or the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan, then you can get your CPA designation through a MOU, as an MOU. So basically, in this case, you don't go through the whole program, but they place you in those last modules that I talked about. So you go straight into the capstone modules, which help you to prepare to write the final, the CFE. And then from there, you could potentially become a CPA. So there are exceptions. Again, if you have an international designation, I encourage you, if your designation we don't have like a mutual recognition agreement or a reciprocal membership agreement with that organization, I encourage you to check with IFAC. So you can go to the IFAC website and then just check to see if your organization where you have your international accounting designation is part of IFAC. Because if that's the case, then you probably can bypass, you can potentially receive some credits as well. So you don't have to go through the whole program. In some cases, IFAC members so just have an opportunity to challenge the different exams. So we would say, okay, maybe, for example, if you have an ACCA designation and you do have some work experience, then there's a possibility that you probably would just have to go challenge the different exams in the core modules and in the elective modules, and then you jump straight into the capstone modules, and then you complete those and you write the CFE, the Common Final Exam. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to skip the resources because, well, I'm going to talk about career services. I'm not going to talk about employer relations. I can tell you those once you are in the program, just in the interest of time. But career services is something that actually you can benefit from while you are a CPA candidate. So you don't even have to be a CPA to benefit from this service. This is a service that, and I know the Edmonton region Immigrant Employment Council works very closely with our career services. Once you are in the program, they can help you with your job search strategies. They can help you with your resume review. They can coach you on how to successfully sit in an interview. There's so many services. Your social media presence, the job board, for example. We do have a job board where employers looking for CPAs and CPA candidates advertise opportunities. So when you enter the program, then you have access to these services. So you can actually have free access to that job board, and you can apply for those jobs as well. Yeah, and then we do have something called CPA Assist. Again, it's just to help people deal with stress as they go through the program. Just because sometimes they're balancing different responsibilities and it's not always easy. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of our presentation. I did mention career services. If you have any questions, if you are in the program, once you get in, and if you have any questions regarding like those resume reviews, like questions that are related to how to enter the job market, or if you need support in that area, career services is definitely people, like a department that you should get familiar with. I work with employer relations. I have my colleague here. Her name is Coralie. Both of us, we do check this employer relations inbox. So if you have any questions after this presentation, or if you just want to chat a little bit more, feel free to email employer relations, and we would be happy to even like schedule a one-on-one conversation with you and just answer any specific questions that you may have. Now, if you're submitting your transcripts and you have questions, please, you can also email Transcript Assessment at the CPA Western School of Business, and they will be able to help you as well. So that's the end of the presentation.